The impossible patient. The Zixtai Medical Station's emergency alert system hadn't activated in over 3 stellar cycles. Its piercing crystalline chime now echoed through the pristine white corridors, causing Chief Medical Officer Ravel's sensory tendrils to ripple with agitation. The incoming patient's vitals scrolled across his neural interface. Radiation levels far beyond survivable limits, cellular degradation accelerating, major organ systems failing. But what truly caught his attention was the patient's species designation: human. "Prepare containment chamber 3. Ravel ordered, his outer membrane shifting to emergency response coloration. "Full radiation protocols. And someone get me everything we have on human physiology." The medical station's transport pad hummed to life as the emergency teleporter engaged. A shimmer of blue light coalesced into 2 forms: a human female in a charred spacesuit and a frantic-looking junior medical officer. The human skin was an angry red, blistered in patches where her suit had failed. Her dark hair was matted with sweat, and blood trickled from her nose and ears. "Commander Sarah Chen, United Earth Fleet," the junior officer reported, helping transfer her to the hovering medical platform. She was caught in a radiation surge while repairing a quantum communications array. Their ship's medical bay couldn't handle the exposure levels. Ravel's diagnostic tendrils extended, gathering data as they rushed toward the containment chamber. The readings made his secondary heart stutter. These radiation levels, by all known medical science, she should already be dead. "Humans are remarkably resilient," offered Dr. Nix Era, the station's xenobiology specialist, joining them at a run. Her crystalline exoskeleton clinked softly as she moved. "Their cells have unexpected repair capabilities." "Not this resilient," Ravel countered, watching the commander's vital signs continue to deteriorate. "No known species could survive this level of exposure for more than a few minutes. She's been exposed for nearly an hour." They reached the containment chamber, its protective fields shimmering as they passed through. The room's advanced medical systems immediately began interfacing with Commander Chen's failing body. Holographic displays materialized, showing the devastating damage to her cellular structure. "Beginning emergency radiation extraction," Nix Era announced, her appendages dancing across the control interface, attempting to stabilize organ function. Ravel studied the readings with growing concern. The human's body was being torn apart at the molecular level, yet somehow her essential functions persisted. It defied everything he knew about radiation damage. His medical training told him this was a lost cause. They were merely prolonging the inevitable. But something about the data caught his attention. Amid the cascade of cellular death, there were anomalous readings. Tiny pockets of cells weren't just surviving. They were adapting. "Look at this," he called to Nix Ara, highlighting a cluster of readings. "These cellular structures, they're mutating in response to the radiation. Not dying, not deteriorating, but changing." Nix Ara's crystalline form shifted in surprise. "That's impossible. Radiation of this magnitude should destroy cellular integrity completely. Unless..." She paused, her scientific curiosity evident in the way her exoskeleton refracted light. "Unless human DNA repair mechanisms are far more sophisticated than we realized." A sudden alarm cut through their discussion. Commander Chen's body arched off the medical platform, seized by violent convulsions. Her vital signs spiked chaotically across the displays. "Full organ failure imminent," the medical system announced. "Recommend immediate cryogenic suspension." Ravel's tendrils writhed with indecision. Cryogenic suspension was a last resort. It might preserve what was left of the commander's body, but in her current state, revival would be virtually impossible. Yet every moment they waited reduced her already minimal chances of survival. "Wait." Nix Ara's voice cut through his thoughts. "Look at her cellular activity. The mutation pattern is accelerating. If we suspend her now, we might interrupt whatever process her body is attempting." It went against every protocol, every medical principle Ravel had sworn to uphold. Allowing a patient to endure such suffering when they could offer the mercy of suspension was nearly unthinkable. But humans had already defied so many of their preconceptions. "Continue life support," he ordered. "Maximum cellular regeneration field. And get me a direct link to Earth's medical database. If there's even a fraction of a chance her body can adapt to this, we need to understand how." The next 12 hours pushed the medical station's resources to their limits. Commander Chen's condition fluctuated wildly. Moments of apparent improvement followed by catastrophic declines. Ravel and his team worked in shifts, monitoring the bizarre changes occurring at the cellular level. The commander's DNA was rewriting itself, using the radiation as a catalyst for change, rather than succumbing to its destructive effects. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen, and it challenged everything they thought they knew about biological adaptation. "Her cellular structure is stabilizing," Nixera reported during the 13th hour. "The radiation levels are dropping, but not because we're removing it. Her cells are absorbing it, incorporating it somehow." Revel studied the latest scans with a mixture of disbelief and awe. The human's body hadn't just survived the impossible. It had learned from it. The very force that should have destroyed her had become a tool for her survival. "Document everything," he ordered. "Every reading, every cellular change, every deviation from expected outcomes. This case could revolutionize our understanding of both human physiology and radiation treatment." As the station's day cycle drew to a close, Commander Chen's condition finally stabilized enough for them to induce a healing coma. Her vital signs, while still far from normal, had found a rhythm that suggested recovery rather than decline. Revel recorded his final notes for the day, his tendrils moving slowly with fatigue. "Patient status: critical but stable. Preliminary analysis suggests unprecedented cellular adaptation to lethal radiation exposure. Human medical databases contain no similar cases. Unknown if changes are temporary or permanent. Continued observation essential." He paused, adding one final note. "Personal observation. Perhaps we need to reconsider what we believe to be impossible when it comes to human biology. Their capacity for survival appears to extend far beyond our current understanding of medical science." As he prepared to end his shift, Revel found himself returning to Commander Chen's bedside. Her skin was still angry and blistered, but the bleeding had stopped, and her breathing had steadied. The medical readouts showed her cells continuing their remarkable adaptation, rebuilding and restructuring with the absorbed radiation. "Rest well, Commander," he said softly. "You've given us quite a mystery to solve." The containment chamber's lights dimmed automatically, leaving only the soft glow of medical monitors and the shimmer of protective fields. In the semi-darkness, Revel could have sworn he saw a faint luminescence beneath the commander's skin, a visible sign of the extraordinary changes taking place within her body. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, and hopefully new understanding. But for now, they had achieved what Revel had initially thought impossible. They had kept her alive. And in doing so, they had stumbled upon what might be one of the most significant discoveries in xenomedicine. The impossible patient had become their greatest teacher. Breaking medical protocol. Dr. Nixera's crystalline form cast rainbow refractions across the medical lab's walls as she reviewed Commander Chen's latest test results. 3 days had passed since the human's arrival, and each new scan revealed something unprecedented about her condition. "Computer, overlay cellular structure analysis from 48 hours ago with current readings," she commanded. The holographic display shimmered, showing 2 distinct molecular patterns side by side. The difference was startling. The commander's cells weren't just repairing themselves, they were evolving. A soft chime announced Chief Medical Officer Revel's arrival. His tendrils were coiled tightly, a sign of stress among his species. "The Medical Council is demanding answers," he said without preamble. "They're questioning our decision to continue treatment rather than implement cryogenic suspension." Nixera's exoskeleton clinked as she turned to face him. "Show them these results." The commander's cellular adaptation is beyond anything we've documented in any species. Suspending her would have been a catastrophic mistake. They're not interested in scientific discovery, Rovell replied, his outer membrane darkening with frustration. They're concerned about protocol violations and potential diplomatic incidents if she doesn't survive. If we followed protocol, she would already be dead. Nixera highlighted a particular section of the cellular scan. Look at this. Her DNA isn't just repairing itself. It's incorporating the radiation into new protective structures. It's as if her entire genetic code is being rewritten to prevent this kind of damage from happening again. Before Rovell could respond, the medical bay's monitoring system activated. Commander Chen's brainwave patterns had shifted, showing the first signs of consciousness since her admission. Both doctors rushed to the containment chamber. The commander lay motionless on the medical platform, but her eyes were moving rapidly behind closed lids. The room's sensors detected increased neural activity, particularly in areas associated with memory and sensory processing. Should we wake her? Nixera asked, already adjusting the medical controls. Rovell's tendrils wavered uncertainly. The council would want us to wait for their approval. But given how her body has responded to everything else, he paused, then made a decision. Do it, but carefully. Nixera began reducing the sedation levels while simultaneously strengthening the cellular regeneration field. Commander Chen's vital signs remained stable as her consciousness gradually surfaced. After several tense minutes, her eyes flickered open. Where? Her voice was barely a whisper, rough from disuse. The radiation. You're safe, Commander Chen, Rovell assured her, moving closer to the bed. You're aboard the Zixtai medical station. You've been unconscious for 3 days while we treated your radiation exposure. Sarah's eyes focused slowly on the alien doctors. Should be dead, she managed. The dosage. By all conventional medical understanding, yes, Nixera agreed. But your cellular structure has demonstrated remarkable adaptive capabilities. You're not just surviving, Commander, you're changing. A weak smile crossed Sarah's cracked lips. Humans, we're good at that. Her eyes drifted to the holographic displays showing her cellular structure. Those are my cells. Indeed. Nixera brought the display closer. Your DNA is actively reconstructing itself, using the radiation as a catalyst for evolution. We've never seen anything like it. The medical council is quite interested in your case, Rovell added carefully, though they have some concerns about our treatment approach. Sarah's expression hardened slightly, meaning they wanted to give up on me. It wasn't a question. Protocol dictated cryogenic suspension, Rovell admitted, but Dr. Nixera noticed the adaptive changes in your cells. We chose to take a risk. Thank you, Sarah whispered. She tried to move but found her body unresponsive. Can't feel my limbs. Your nervous system is still regenerating, Nixera explained. The paralysis is temporary. But, Commander, there's something you need to understand. The changes your body is undergoing, they're permanent. Your cellular structure has been fundamentally altered. Sarah processed this information silently for a moment. Will I still be human? Genetically, your base DNA remains human, Rovell assured her, but you've developed abilities we don't fully understand yet. Your cells can now absorb and process radiation in ways that should be impossible. We don't know what other changes might manifest as you recover. Fascinating, isn't it? A new voice joined the conversation. Dr. Kellerath, the station's youngest researcher, entered the chamber. His bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. Commander, your case could revolutionize our understanding of genetic adaptation. The implications for radiation treatment alone. Kellerath, Rovell interrupted sharply. The commander has just regained consciousness. This isn't the time for scientific enthusiasm. But Sarah was already showing interest. No, please continue. I'd like to understand what's happening to me. Over the next hour, Kellerath explained their findings in detail, his natural enthusiasm making complex genetic theory surprisingly accessible. Sarah listened intently, asking occasional questions despite her obvious fatigue. "So my cells aren't just resistant to radiation now," she summarized. "They're actually using it as an energy source." "Precisely." Kelrath's bioluminescence brightened. "Your DNA has essentially created a new cellular process, similar to how plants use photosynthesis. Instead of light, your cells are processing radiation for energy." "The medical council will want to study this extensively," Revel noted. "Once you've recovered, of course." Sarah's eyes had begun to drift closed, but she forced them open. Tell them I'm willing to help, but no dissection." A weak laugh escaped her. "At least not until I can walk out of here on my own." "Rest now, Commander," Nix-Era advised, noting her dropping energy levels. "We'll continue this discussion when you're stronger." As Sarah slipped back into sleep, the medical team gathered around their monitoring stations. The data continued to pour in, each reading more remarkable than the last. They had broken nearly every protocol in the medical handbook, risked their careers, and challenged fundamental assumptions about biology. And in doing so, they had not only saved a life, but potentially discovered a new chapter in medical science. As Revel prepared his report for the medical council, he couldn't help but wonder how many other impossible things were humans capable of, and how many more of their limitations would prove to be merely temporary obstacles. The answers to these questions would have to wait. For now, they had a patient to heal, and a mountain of bureaucratic resistance to navigate. But looking at Commander Chen's peaceful form, surrounded by displays showing her extraordinary cellular transformation, Revel knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes, breaking protocol was the only way to break through to new frontiers of understanding. The human factor. The dreams came in waves of radiation-tinged blue. Sarah Chen floated through memories that weren't quite her own, experiencing sensations that her human brain struggled to process. Her cells hummed with newfound energy, each one a tiny reactor processing radiation into something else, something more. "Neural activity is spiking again," Kelrath reported, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in sync with the medical monitors. "The integration between her modified cellular structure and her nervous system is accelerating." Sarah could hear them discussing her condition, their voices filtering through her semi-conscious state. She wanted to tell them about the changes she could feel, how every atom of her being seemed to resonate with a new awareness. But consciousness remained just out of reach, her mind too busy processing the transformation of her body. "Her brainwave patterns are unlike anything in our database," Dr. Nix-Era observed, her crystalline form shifting colors as she analyzed the readings. "It's as if her consciousness is operating on multiple levels simultaneously." In her mind, Sarah watched the moment of the radiation surge again. The quantum communications array had malfunctioned, bathing her in deadly energy. She remembered the pain, the certainty of death. And then something else. Her cells hadn't just survived. They had reached out, hungry for the energy that should have destroyed them. "Commander Chen." Revel's voice penetrated her thoughts. "Can you hear us?" Sarah forced her eyes open, the sterile white of the medical chamber now tinged with a strange blue glow. It took her a moment to realize the light was coming from her own skin, a faint luminescence that pulsed with her heartbeat. "I hear you," she managed, her voice stronger than before. "And I remember everything." The medical team gathered around her bed, their various biological displays showing intense interest. Even through her disorientation, Sarah found herself fascinated by their alien physiologies, Revel's flowing tendrils, Nix-Era's crystalline structure, Kelrath's bioluminescent patterns. She could somehow sense the different ways their bodies processed energy, as if her new cellular awareness extended beyond her own form. "Tell us what you remember," Kelrath encouraged, barely containing his scientific excitement. "The radiation." Sarah closed her eyes, focusing on the memories. "It should have torn me apart. But my cells, they were scared at first, dying by the millions. Then something changed. They started learning, adapting. It was like they remembered something buried deep in our genetic code." something from Earth's early days when radiation was everywhere. Fascinating. Nixera interjected. Your species evolved on a planet that experienced significant cosmic radiation during its early development. Perhaps this adaptive capability was always present in your DNA, just waiting for the right trigger. Sarah nodded slowly. It feels natural now, like waking up to a sense I never knew I had. She lifted her hand, watching the blue luminescence flow beneath her skin. I can feel the radiation in the room, in the medical equipment. I can feel how my cells are processing it. The medical council is very interested in this development, Revel said carefully. They've sent a specialist, Dr. Vaxel. He's traditional in his approach to xenomedicine. As if summoned by his name, the door to the medical chamber slid open. Dr. Vaxel entered, his massive frame covered in iridescent scales that marked him as a member of the Xi medical elite. His presence seemed to fill the room, and Sarah noticed the other doctors subtly straightening their postures. So, Vaxel's voice rumbled. This is the human who defies medical science. His compound eyes studied Sarah with clinical detachment. The Council is concerned about the implications of your transformation, Commander Chen. Uncontrolled genetic adaptation poses risks we cannot ignore. Sarah met his gaze steadily. With respect, Doctor, there's nothing uncontrolled about what's happening to me. My body knows exactly what it's doing. Does it? Vaxel moved closer, his scales shifting color as he examined her readings. You've become a living radiation processor. The potential for environmental contamination alone is minimal, Kellerath interrupted, earning a sharp look from the senior physician. Our tests show the commander's cells are remarkably stable. They're not just absorbing radiation, they're converting it completely. There's no secondary emission. The young are always eager to embrace the unprecedented, Vaxel replied dismissively. But medical protocols exist for a reason. This case requires quarantine, extensive testing, perhaps even. No. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. The blue glow beneath her skin intensified slightly. I agreed to help you study these changes, but I'm not a lab specimen. I'm a patient who survived because these doctors were willing to think beyond their protocols. The room's atmosphere grew tense. Vaxel's scales darkened with disapproval, while the other doctors exchanged uncertain glances. But Sarah wasn't finished. Look at your readings, doctor. Really look at them. My body hasn't just adapted to survive radiation. It's created an entirely new way of processing energy. Think of the possibilities. How many lives could be saved if we understand how this works? How many species could benefit? Vaxel was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes fixed on the cellular scans. Finally, he spoke. You suggest we should embrace this anomaly. I suggest, Sarah said carefully, that sometimes the greatest medical breakthroughs come from understanding the exceptions to our rules. Isn't that why you became a doctor? To heal, to learn, to push the boundaries of what's possible. Something shifted in Vaxel's posture. His scales slowly lightened, showing what Sarah hoped was thoughtful consideration. Your argument has merit, but the Council will require extensive documentation, controlled studies, which we're already conducting. Nixera interjected smoothly. Dr. Kellerath has developed a comprehensive research protocol that maintains safety while allowing for thorough investigation of the commander's condition. The tension in the room gradually eased as the doctors began discussing technical details. Sarah let their scientific dialogue wash over her, focusing instead on the new sensations flowing through her transformed body. She could feel her cells continuing to adapt, becoming more efficient at processing radiation. The fear of these changes was still there, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of possibility. Later, as the medical team dispersed and the lights dimmed for the night cycle, Sarah lay awake, watching the blue luminescence dance beneath her skin. She thought about Earth's early days, when life first emerged in a world bathed in cosmic radiation. Perhaps this wasn't just an adaptation, but a remembering. human DNA recalling ancient survival mechanisms coded into its very structure. "Computer," she called softly, "show me the latest cellular scans." The holographic display materialized above her bed, showing the intricate dance of her transformed cells. To most observers, it would look alien, frightening even. But to Sarah, it was beautiful, proof that humanity's capacity for adaptation went far deeper than anyone had imagined. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more questions, more challenges. But for now, Sarah Chen, the human who survived the impossible, allowed herself to marvel at what she had become. Not a victim of radiation, but a pioneer of human potential. Not a medical anomaly, but a bridge between species, helping to expand the boundaries of what was possible in this vast, radiation-filled universe. Defying death. 1 week after her near-death experience, Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Zixtai Medical Station, watching the stars. Her skin no longer glowed with visible radiation. She had learned to control that. But she could feel the cosmic rays washing over the station's shields, a constant dance of energy that her transformed cells eagerly absorbed. "Your recovery continues to exceed all projections," Dr. Kellerath said, reviewing her latest scans. His bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. "The efficiency of your radiation processing has increased by another 12%. Sarah turned from the viewport, smiling at the young alien doctor's enthusiasm. "I can feel the difference. It's like," she searched for the right words, "like upgrading from an old chemical battery to a quantum reactor. Everything's clearer, stronger." The Medical Council is particularly interested in your control over the energy conversion process, Nix-Era added, her crystalline form refracting starlight as she entered the observation room. No other known species can consciously regulate cellular energy absorption. The past week had been intense. Once Sarah had regained enough strength to walk, the medical team had begun a series of carefully monitored experiments. They had exposed her to various forms of radiation, documenting how her transformed cells responded. Each test revealed new aspects of her capabilities and new questions about the limits of human adaptation. "Dr. Vaxel's latest report actually praises your cooperation," Ravel announced, his tendrils rippling with amusement as he joined them. "Coming from him, that's practically a declaration of love." Sarah laughed, remembering the stern senior physician's initial skepticism. "He's not so bad once you get past the rigid traditionalist exterior. Yesterday he actually asked me about Earth's early evolutionary history, seemed genuinely interested in understanding how these abilities might have developed." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. Red warning lights flashed across the medical station's displays, accompanied by an urgent announcement. "Emergency radiation containment failure in Research Lab 6. All personnel evacuate immediately." "That's the isotope storage facility," Kellerath explained, his bioluminescence flickering with concern. "If those containment fields fail completely, the entire section would be flooded with lethal radiation." Nix-Era finished. "The emergency systems should activate." Another alert cut through the air. "Emergency systems offline. Containment failure in 60 seconds. Sarah was already moving. "How many people in that section?" "3 researchers, Ravel replied, his tendrils coiling with distress. "But Commander, you can't. I can absorb radiation, remember." Sarah broke into a run, her transformed cells humming with anticipation. "Get a medical team ready. Those researchers will need treatment even if I can contain the leak." She reached the emergency bulkhead just as it was sealing. Her new abilities gave her enhanced strength, another side effect of her cellular transformation, allowing her to force the door open just enough to slip through. The corridor beyond was already shimmering with visible radiation, the air itself seeming to waver with deadly energy. Sarah could feel her cells responding, eager to process the radiation streaming from the damaged containment units. She pushed forward, hearing the panicked voices of the trapped researchers. "Here," she called out. "Follow my voice. Three Zixtai scientists huddled behind an overturned console, their protective suits already showing signs of radiation damage. Sarah reached them just as the main containment field collapsed. Raw energy flooded the chamber. The researchers cried out in terror, but Sarah stood firm, positioning herself between them and the worst of the radiation. Her cells sang as they absorbed the deadly energy, processing it faster than she had thought possible. "Move," she ordered, helping the scientists to their feet. "Stay close to me. I'll shield you as much as I can." The journey back to the bulkhead was a blur of pain and determination. Sarah's body was absorbing more radiation than she had ever attempted, pushing her new abilities to their limit. But she could feel it working. Her cells converting the lethal energy into harmless forms, creating a relatively safe corridor for the researchers to escape through. When they finally reached the sealed bulkhead, emergency teams were waiting. The researchers were rushed to medical treatment while Sarah remained behind, continuing to absorb the radiation until repair crews could restore the containment fields. Hours later, she sat in the medical chamber, undergoing yet another round of scans. The incident had pushed her transformation even further. Her cells had adapted to process radiation even more efficiently, developing new mechanisms to handle the massive energy surge. By all rights, that level of exposure should have killed you instantly, Dr. Vaxel stated, studying her readings with unprecedented interest. Instead, your cellular structure has actually improved its energy conversion capabilities. Human adaptation at its finest, Sarah replied, managing a tired smile. We tend to perform best under pressure. The event had dramatic repercussions throughout the medical station. Word spread quickly about the human who had not only survived lethal radiation exposure, but used it to save others. The medical council, initially so concerned about the risks of Sarah's transformation, now faced a growing chorus of voices calling for expanded research into human adaptive capabilities. We're already receiving requests from other medical facilities, Rovell informed her. They want to establish research programs, develop treatments based on your cellular mechanisms. Your case could revolutionize radiation therapy across known space. Sarah absorbed this news thoughtfully. Her transformation had begun as a desperate survival response, but it had become something more. A bridge between species, a key to understanding the remarkable adaptability of life itself. I've been thinking, she said finally. My tour with the United Earth Fleet was almost over anyway. Maybe it's time for a career change. She gestured at the medical facility around them. You could use someone with first-hand experience of these changes to help develop new treatments. The medical team exchanged excited glances. Even Dr. Vaxel's scales shifted to a pleased coloration. The implications were enormous. A human working directly with alien medical researchers, helping to unlock the secrets of cellular adaptation and radiation resistance. The bureaucratic challenges will be significant, Vaxel warned, though his tone lacked its former skepticism. But the potential benefits. His compound eyes studied Sarah with new respect. Perhaps it is time for our medical protocols to adapt as well. As the doctors discussed the possibilities, Sarah returned to the viewport, gazing out at the star-filled expanse. She could feel the cosmic radiation washing over her, no longer a threat, but a reminder of humanity's remarkable capacity for change. They had evolved on a radiation-soaked world, developed the ability to survive and adapt to virtually any environment. And now, through one near-death experience, they had discovered that their potential for adaptation went far beyond what anyone had imagined. It wasn't just about surviving the impossible. It was about transforming it into something new, something beneficial for all species. Sarah Chen had died, according to every medical protocol in known space, but she had returned with more than just her life. She had brought back hope, understanding, and a glimpse of humanity's true potential. The radiation that should have killed her had instead illuminated a new path forward, not just for her, but for medical science across the galaxy. A new understanding. 3 months after the radiation containment incident, the Zixtai Medical Station had transformed almost as dramatically as Commander Sarah Chen herself. What had once been a traditional medical facility was now the galaxy's premier center for xenobiological adaptation research, and at its heart was the human who had changed everything. Sarah stood before the assembled medical council, her presence commanding attention even among the varied alien species that made up the galaxy's medical elite. The subtle blue luminescence beneath her skin, now a controlled indicator of her radiation processing, cast a soft glow across her United Earth Fleet uniform, modified with the new insignia of her role as Chief Adaptation Specialist. The human cellular response to extreme conditions represents more than just a medical breakthrough, she explained, gesturing to the holographic displays showing her latest research results. It demonstrates a fundamental truth about life itself. Adaptation isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. Dr. Vaxel, now one of her strongest supporters on the council, nodded in agreement. His scales shimmered with academic excitement as he addressed his colleagues. Commander Chen's case has led to the development of 15 new treatment protocols. The radiation processing mechanisms we've documented in her cells have already saved hundreds of lives across 3 sectors. The statistics were impressive. In the 3 months since Sarah had begun working with the medical team, they had successfully treated cases that would have been considered hopeless under traditional protocols. Radiation exposure victims, once given up for dead, were now being saved through treatments derived from studying her transformed biology. But it's not just about radiation, Kellerath added, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with enthusiasm. The adaptive mechanisms we've discovered have implications for all forms of cellular repair and regeneration. We're seeing applications in neural reconstruction, organ regeneration, even genetic therapy. The young doctor had grown into his role as head of the station's new adaptive medicine division. His initial excitement about Sarah's case had developed into a deep understanding of the broader implications of human cellular adaptability. The most significant finding, Nyx's era continued, her crystalline form refracting light, as she moved to highlight specific data points, is that these adaptive capabilities appear to be latent in all human DNA. Commander Chen's exposure didn't create something new. It awakened something that was always there, something that dates back to Earth's earliest life forms. Sarah watched the council members absorb this information. She could sense their mixture of amazement and apprehension, the same reaction she'd first seen when she awoke in the medical chamber, transformed but still fundamentally human. We've begun identifying similar dormant mechanisms in other species, she added, bringing up new comparative analyses. Different evolutionary paths, but the same basic principle. Life finds a way to adapt, to transform threats into opportunities. We just have to learn how to access these capabilities safely. The implications were staggering. Every species carried the genetic memory of its evolutionary journey, including survival mechanisms that had gone dormant over millions of years. Sarah's case had provided the key to understanding how these ancient abilities could be reawakened and controlled. There are risks, of course, Dr. Vaxel acknowledged, his scales shifting to a more serious hue. Cellular transformation must be carefully monitored and controlled, but we can no longer ignore the potential benefits because of our attachment to traditional medical protocols. The council chamber erupted in discussion, various species debating the implications in their native languages. Sarah stepped back, allowing them their moment of revelation. Her gaze drifted to the viewport, where Earth was visible as a distant blue dot among the stars. Raval joined her, his tendrils moving thoughtfully. When you first arrived here, barely alive from radiation exposure, did you ever imagine it would lead to this? Sarah smiled, remembering those first chaotic hours. Honestly, I was too busy trying not to die to imagine anything. But looking back, it makes a certain kind of sense. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt, to take what should destroy us, and make it part of who we are. Your species continues to surprise us, Ravel observed. Just when we think we understand your limitations, you demonstrate that they're merely temporary obstacles. The council's discussion was winding down, moving from debate to action. New research initiatives were being approved, funding allocated for expanded studies into adaptive medicine. The galaxy's medical establishment, traditionally one of its most conservative institutions, was embracing change with unprecedented speed. Commander Chen, the council chief called, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. "We have a proposal for you." Sarah returned to the center of the chamber, standing tall under the collective gaze of the assembled medical leadership. "We want to establish a new division, the Interspecies Adaptive Medicine Institute. Its mission will be to study and develop treatments based on the principles we've learned from your case. We would like you to lead it." The offer shouldn't have surprised her, but it did. 3 months ago, she had been a United Earth Fleet officer with a conventional career path. Now she stood at the forefront of a medical revolution, her transformed body a living testament to humanity's potential for adaptation. "I accept," she said simply, feeling her cells hum with energy and purpose. "On one condition." The council chief tilted his head inquiringly. "We make this a true collaboration, not just between doctors and patients, but between species. Every race has its own evolutionary history, its own dormant abilities waiting to be understood. Together, we could unlock potential we've never imagined." Agreement rippled through the chamber. The medical elite of known space, witnessing the birth of a new era in healing and understanding. Later, alone in her quarters, Sarah reviewed the day's events. Her terminal displayed messages from across the galaxy, medical facilities requesting cooperation, researchers proposing studies, even notes from patients whose lives had been saved by the new treatments. Her reflection in the viewport caught her attention. The soft blue glow beneath her skin pulsed gently, a reminder of how far she had come. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a pioneer, helping to chart a course toward a future where the impossible became possible, where death itself could be defied through understanding and adaptation. "Computer," she called out, "begin recording. New research protocol proposal. Investigation into dormant adaptive mechanisms across known sentient species. Primary objective: development of targeted activation therapies for emergency survival responses." As she dictated her ideas, Sarah Chen, once declared dead by alien doctors, smiled at the irony of her situation. She had not only survived, but had helped transform medical science itself. And this was just the beginning. The stars beckoned through the viewport, each one potentially holding new challenges, new opportunities for adaptation and growth. Humanity's journey into space had revealed many wonders, but perhaps the greatest discovery was the one they carried within themselves: the boundless capacity to adapt, to change, to become more than they ever thought possible. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: death would have to work a lot harder to claim its victims in this new era of adaptive medicine. And Sarah Chen, the human who refused to die, would help lead the way forward.